In at 5, Sirens. Hailing from Greek mythology, sirens were supposedly dangerous creatures who, according to the legend of Odysseus, the sirens would lure nearby sailors with their enchanting music and singing, which would cause them to shipwreck on the rocky coast of the Sirens' island. The ships would be wrecked and the sailors aboard would perish either by drowning or slain by the sirens themselves. However, what makes these creatures interesting is that whatever they did to their captives is unknown, but has been implied throughout mythology that they ate the unfortunate sailors. Savage. Now, when Odysseus sailed towards the island housing the sirens, he ordered his crew to tie him to the mast so that he could hear the siren songs without being led astray. Smart mans. The crew were also ordered to plug their ears with beeswax so that they could not hear. In turn, Odysseus' ship passed safely by the island. Now, these mythological monsters were believed to combine women and birds in various ways, often represented as birds with large female heads, bird feathers, and scaly feet. However, throughout history this depiction would change, with them now being represented as female figures with the legs of birds, with or without wings, playing a variety of musical instruments, particularly harps. They've also been depicted as beautiful women whose bodies, not just their voices, are seductive. Now, according to Ovid, the sirens were the companions of a young Persephone. Demeter gave them wings to search for Persephone when she was abducted by Hades. However, Demeter would curse the sirens for failing to intervene in the abduction and were ultimately fated to live only until their mortals who heard their songs were able to pass them by. In at 4, Jormungandr. Hailing from Norse mythology, Jormungandr, meaning huge monster and also known as the Midgard world serpent, is a sea monster and the middle child of the giantess Angbodr and Loki. Now, according to mythology, Odin took Loki's 3 children by Angbodr, the wolf Fenrir, Hel, and Jormungandr, and tossed the latter into the great ocean that encircles Midgard. The serpent then grew so large that it was able to surround the entire earth and grasp its own tail. As a result of this, it received the name the World Serpent. When this monster releases its tail though, Ragnarok will begin. Frightening stuff. Once the beast releases its tail, the seas will become violent as the serpent thrashes its way onto land. Fenrir will set ablaze one half of the world with fireballs, while Jormungandr sprays poison to fill the skies and seas of the other half. The two will then join the sons of Muspel into the plane of Vigrid. Here is where the last meeting between the serpent and Thor is predicted to occur. Thor will become occupied with battling Jormungandr, and they will be unable to help others as they fight their own battles. Thor, however, will eventually kill the serpent, but will fall dead after walking just 9 paces, having been poisoned by the serpent's deadly venom. Tragic stuff, this dude is not to be messed with. In at 3, the Kraken. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster hailing from Norse mythology and is a creature of enormous proportions, meaning an unhealthy or twisted animal. The Kraken was borrowed for one of the main antagonist monsters in Ray Harryhausen's Clash of the Titans. This creature is often described as a cephalopod and resembling a giant octopus or squid. The Kraken is said to emerge from the depths of the ocean and envelop whole ships in the grasp of its tentacles and drag them beneath the murky waters. Now, most will remember this sea monster also making an appearance in the second installment of the Pirates of the Caribbean, which featured a more mythologically accurate depiction of the Kraken as opposed to the 2010 remake of Clash of the Titans. Now, its true mythological history goes something like this. After returning from Greenland, an old Norwegian author described in detail the physical characteristics and feeding behavior of the Kraken, proposing that there must be just 2 in all of existence, stemming from the observation that the beasts have always been sighted in the same parts of Greenland Sea and that each seemed incapable of reproduction, as there was seemingly no increase in their numbers. And while that fact may put some minds at ease, there is no denying the impact the Kraken has had on popular culture and sailors alike, with many fearing beneath those murky waters are elongated tentacles waiting patiently to feast. In at 2, Dagon. Dagon is a deity who presides over the Deep Ones, an amphibious humanoid race indigenous to Earth's oceans. Now, this bad boy was first introduced in Lovecraft's short story Dagon, but is also mentioned extensively through the mythos. Also referred to as Father Dagon, he is a great old one and the consort of Mother Hydra. Now, Dagon is huge, really huge, and could potentially reach a height of 50 feet. He is an enormous monster and is worshipped by the devout cult of humans and Deep Ones, who revere him as their their deity. It is rumored that he is immortal, however his longevity may be attributed to his fraternization with the Starspawn, who will oftentimes select specimens from a given species to protect, nurture, and empower for reasons only known to them. Now Dagon is aptly described in the short story, I quote, "With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, Polyphemus-like, and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. This is not a beast you would want to stumble across on a dark night." And finally in at number 1, Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a fictional cosmic entity created by our favourite writer over here at Top 5 Scary, H.P. Lovecraft himself, and was first introduced in the short story The Call of Cthulhu, which, if you haven't read it, get on it immediately. Cthulhu is a great old one of great power that lies in the depth-like slumber beneath the Pacific Ocean in his sunken city of R'lyeh, and remains a dominant presence in the eldritch dealings on our world. Now it's near impossible to describe Cthulhu, however the most detailed descriptions come from the Call of Cthulhu and are based on statues of the creature. One of these statues, constructed by an artist after a series of baleful dreams, is said to have, I quote, "yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, a pulpy tentacled head surmounted, a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings." Horrifying, right? Worse still, this oceanic monster has a loyal group of followers. It is unknown how large the throng of worshippers are, but his cult has many cells around the globe and are noted for chanting horrid phrases that translate to, I quote, "In his house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." So what happens when Cthulhu emerges from his slumber beneath the ocean? Well, the story says that, I quote, "the thing cannot be described, but it is called the green sticky spawns of the stars, with flabby claws and an awful squid head with writhing feelers. All I can say, folks, is that if Cthulhu awakens, there's trouble for not just you, but for all of us. You have been warned."
Swooping in at number 5, we've got the Kamitachi. You like your limbs, right? You'd rather they didn't fly off in the blink of an eye? Well, then you'd be best to avoid these wind weasels as best you can. Also known as the sickle weasel, the Kamitachi usually roams around on whirlwinds in groups of 3. Sometimes they're brothers, sometimes even triplets, but the trio aspect is pretty much immovable. These little fuzzy flayers like to run around and cut people's legs off. At the ankles or calves is the usual choice, but you never know. Their method of slicing and dicing is pretty ubiquitous. The first weasel will knock the victim down, the second will come through with a sickle and slice the leg off, then the third and final fellow will run through, sew up the wounds, and put some numbing medicine on the newly stumpified leg. This all happens so fast most folks don't even notice their legs are gone until they're staring up at the clouds. Blink and you'll miss it. At first the numbing agent makes it so there's no pain, but that will wear off eventually, and then you'll get to deal with the pain of having your legs hacked off and sewn up by a tiny mammal. Coming in at number 4, we've got Hyosube. Okay, are you ready for my quick description of this? You sure? Alright, this is an eggplant stealing filth goblin. Doesn't that sound just wonderful? These short, hairy, dirty, humanoid things run around like they own the place and kill a whole bunch of folks as a result. If you see one, you die. And they don't do a very good job of staying out of sight. Hide and seek, this is not. They wander about just waiting for an unfortunate soul to behold them. As they live out their terrible little lives, they also eat all of the eggplants in your garden. Oh, you were gonna make some baba ganoush. Well, too bad. Hyosube say, "F your dip-based meals and f you too." All of the aubergines get consumed and they trample the fields for good measure. The jerks. The only way to avoid accidentally seeing one is to leave out some prime eggplants for them, and even this is hit and miss. For some reason, eating your crops and ruining your fields isn't enough, and Hyosube also like to use your bathtub. And like I mentioned earlier, they're very dirty little creatures. They're known for leaving behind ridiculous amounts of filth, like hair, dirt, and scum. To me, finding somebody else's filth in my bathroom is about an 8 out of 10 on the heebie-jeebies scale. So this is absolutely life-altering information. And by the way, you can't throw out the bathwater or it'll just kill you anyway. Honestly, I think I'd rather die than having to live with a tub full of goblin stink for the rest of my tenure. Coming in at number 3, we've got Tsuchigumo. Monsters have been mashed for as long as we can remember, and it's not always a graveyard smash, mind you. Sometimes it's the combination of many real, living creatures to make something extra nightmarish. Manticores, chimeras, ligers. Maybe that last one is real, but I bounce between Napoleon Dynamite and Joe Exotic for opinions on the mystical status of a But I bounce between Napoleon Dynamite and Joe Exotic for opinions on the mystical status of a lion-tiger crossbreed. Back to the Tsuchigumo though. This is a beast with the body of a tiger, the limbs of a spider, and the face of a demon. Part real mammal, part real, albeit much smaller arachnid, part mythical monster. Hell yeah, I want to fight this in a video game. But if I'm not behind an LCD screen with a super powerful video game avatar, I don't think I'd ever want to cross one of these. Apparently Tsuchikumo were known for eating travelers as they made their way across the countryside. In the remote fields, no one can hear you scream. 1 or 2 traveling morsels wasn't enough either. In one tale, a powerful warrior took one down and sliced it open, you know, to loot the body. We're back in the video game world, of course. And inside, there were 1,990 skulls. 10 shy of 2,000. That's a prolific people eater. Coming in at number 2, we've got Jorogumo. If you've ever seen the Spookies, you'll know that the best monster in the ridiculous mishmash is a spider woman. Now, the monster who drains the puppeteer dry and the Jorogumo aren't identical, but they do share the 2 major components of spider women. The spider part and the woman part. Deep analysis, I know. But getting trapped in a sticky web and having all your fluids drained, not fun. In fact, it sounds like a terrible time. For some, I feel like maybe some people might enjoy it. This is why arachnid gals are the worst. The Jorogumo is an ancient creature with depictions dating all the way back to the Edo period in Japan. Its upper half is that of a beautiful woman, while the lower half is hairy spider legs. We've all been there, right? It will lure men to a shack in the middle of nowhere, snare their prey in a web, and then eat them alive. Apparently, when a spider hits year 400, it gains magical transformative powers. I don't know what kinds of spiders usually live that long, but who am I to judge a creature with that much longevity? I probably won't make it till 50. In addition to some Jorogumo using their feminine charm to trap men, there are also versions that will manipulate good folks before devouring them. These spider women will show up with what seems to be a baby, begging for help. Soft-hearted people spring at the opportunity to help this poor mother and end up being torn apart by thousands of freshly hatched spider babies. You ever seen a spider nest ready to burst? Oh no, 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 no. And finally, at number 1, we've got the Teke-Teke. A more modern piece of Japanese folklore, but with enough scare factor and staying power to top today's list. This is the tale of a girl who fell on the train tracks and was cut in half by a passing train. Somehow she was left alive and continued to survive even when her torso was completely separated from her legs. The upper half of this poor gal stalks the night, attacking commuters and dooming them to the same fate. Sometimes she'll cut the train goers in half herself, using a sickle of some sorts. Other times she'll just force them onto the tracks so they can experience a train running them over too. One might wonder where the name Teke-Teke comes from, and like a lot of Japanese folklore, it originates from onomatopoeia. See, this half-person's exposed spine scratches against the pavement and makes a very distinctive sound. And in Japan, that sound is characterized as Teke-Teke. Yes, she's named after bones being dragged across concrete. That's hardcore. More than probably any of the other entries on this list, Teke-Teke makes regular appearances in horror movies, manga, and anime. And it really feels like a modern tale too, much more gruesome and human.
Number 5 on this list is the Jinn, an ancient demon whose main method of attacking people was to trick them. History Collection says the Jinn, or Jinn of Arabic and Islamic mythology, closely matched the original classic daemon or demon. Neither good nor evil, the Jinn were supernatural spirits born of smokeless fire long before the creation of humanity. The Jinn were spiritual beings, formless shapeshifters with magical powers who are ranked somewhere between humans and angels. They were not immortal and humans could kill them. However, a long lifespan compensated them for these disadvantages. In Persian mythology, the Jinn had their own land, Jinnistan, whose capital was the City of Jewels. However, the Jinn also haunted the human world, with favorite places of residence being the desert as well as rivers, wells, and even marketplaces. In this sense, they are very much like the Roman geniloshi spirits of place, and it was customary to ask the local jinns permission before drawing water or even traveling into alien territory. If they appeared before humans, the jinn could appear as animals, monsters, or people. Whatever form they took, people could quickly identify them by their flaming eyes, which were also vertical rather than horizontal. This unusual attribute gave the jinn a sinister appearance that married well with some of their more suspect traits. For although the jinn could be helpers, they were also known to be malicious tricksters. In the worst scenarios, they would raise storms and cause disease, insanity, and death. Islam teaches that every human has an evil jinn whose sole purpose is to tempt its human opposite into evil. This reputation for malevolence is compounded by the fact the chief jinn, Iblis, is also known as Azazel, the Islamic devil. So yeah, I don't think summoning these guys is the best plan. You could literally release a massive disease on your whole city or something like that. Also, you need to be extremely mentally stable and strong to not get tricked by these evil things into doing something that you don't want to do. Speaking as a pretty gullible individual, this would really not be a good idea for me. Number 4 on this list is the Yao Guai. Unless you want your literal life force to get eaten, I wouldn't summon these demons. History Collection says the Yao Guai, or strange ghosts or strange devils, were mythical Chinese demons who, like the Asura, desired immortality and godhood. They included in their number animal spirits such as the fox spirits and fallen celestial beings. However, even though they acquired their powers through the practice of Taoism, the Yao Guai cared little for the balance between light and dark. They were firmly on the dark side and would stop at nothing to achieve their goals of deification. They believed they could accomplish this goal by consuming the life force of holy men. One tale of the Yao Guai appears in the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. The story tells of the pursuit of the holy man Yao Xang by Bei Guzhong, or White Bones Demon. However, unfortunately for Bei Guzhong, Yao Xang was traveling in the company of Sun Wukong, or the Monkey King. The company first encountered the evil spirit disguised as a young girl searching for food. However, the Monkey King saw through the demon's disguise and drove it off with his staff. The Bei Guzhong tried again, firstly disguised as an old woman and finally as an old man. This final time, the Monkey King killed the demon, revealing its true form, a skeleton. Staffs, however, were not the only way to deal with these demons. As they lived in the underworld, the Chinese believed they were afraid of the light, so bonfires, fireworks, and torches were the perfect way to keep them at bay. So if you summon this thing, you may not even know that you have, because it could appear as something else entirely. So unless you have the awareness and power of the Monkey King, which, no offense, I kinda doubt you do, this demon will probably end up getting the better of you. Number 3 on this list is Bayor. Bayor was said to be the chief of a demonic tribe in Celtic culture. He and this tribe threatened the Celtic people with death and destruction constantly. It was also a pretty actionable threat because Bayor was a literal giant. So he and his tribe could obliterate any human resistance if they so chose to do so. His overall strength and size wasn't his best weapon though. His best weapon was his eyeball. His eyeball was said to be poisonous. If Bayor glared at anyone with this evil poisonous eyeball, then they would die right there and then. That is a pretty ridiculous power and kind of OP if you ask me. Now the good thing about this is that legends say Bayor was defeated by his grandson. There was basically a lot of drama and his grandson fought him and took him down. He was never actually killed though. Legend says that he slunk away to the sea and he still resides there to this day. Summoning this demon is clearly just a horrible idea. Not only would you die the second that you summoned him because his eye, but everyone around you would die pretty soon after that too. Just think about the damage a demon like this could cause in a big city. Like, we'd have no way of defending ourselves. Hopefully, my dude stays in the sea for good. Number 2 on this list is the Shedim. These were ancient demons associated with destruction and human sacrifice. The History Collection says, to the Mesopotamians, the Lamassu or the Shedu were powerful human-headed, eagle-winged guardian spirits of the home or the state. The Mesopotamians erected statues of these powerful entities who had the body of either a bull or lion at the gates of palaces or cities. There, they were well placed to ward off invading armies and ensure peace to those within the city walls. In ordinary households, images of the Shedu were carved on clay tablets and buried under the threshold to ensure peace and happiness within. When the Israelites encountered the Shedu, however, they interpreted them in a very different way. Some of them took up the Mesopotamian custom of worshipping them, hence disapproving references in the Old Testament to how such people sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Now to the Jewish mainstream, the Shedu were false idols that possessed statues and masqueraded as gods. As such, they were evil, and so became the Shedim, demons associated with destruction, illness, and human sacrifice. So I guess if you were Mesopotamian, then you could summon these guys and it'd be all good, but if you're anyone else, probably not a good idea. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not trying to deal with a demon full of destruction and illness and just don't want to handle any of that. So no thank you, not trying to get sacrificed today. Number 1 on this list is Allah. So instead of reaching for a Nature Valley bar, this demon would grab the occasional child when she was hungry. Just great. The history collection says Allah is a female demon from Eastern Europe who, like many demons, seems to be derived from a belief in nature and weather spirits that could cause disaster and disease. Allah was believed to reside in clouds, lakes, and springs, or remote mountains or caves, or in large trees. When she visited humankind, she could take many forms. Allah could manifest as a vast black wind or a female dragon, a large-mouthed human, or a raven. She could even possess people. All or any of these relate to Allah's primary characteristic, all-consuming greed. If angered, the demon could manifest violent, thunderous hailstorms to destroy fields, vineyards, and orchards. However, it was equally likely she would satisfy her enormous appetite by devouring the produce herself. And when not over-consuming stolen grape or grain, Allah also liked to snack on her greed was so insatiable that she also periodically tried to eat the sun and the moon, therefore causing eclipses. So not only could you or your get eaten if you summon this thing, but you might also cause the entire world to end if this demon decides that she's hungry enough to chow down on the sun for good. Also, how big would this demon need to be if she was about to eat the entire sun? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Either way, never summon this demon because the human race could literally be at stake if you do. Number 5 on this list is Enyo. Enyo was the Greek goddess of war and destruction. She was the companion and lover to the other god of war, Ares. Enyo is sometimes depicted as being the child to Zeus and Hera, which also makes her the sister to Ares. Enyo is noted as being extremely destructive, which ties very closely to what she is, the god of destruction. Enyo isn't nearly as well known as Ares, but the little that we do know about her leads people to believe that her bloodlust was almost unrivaled. She apparently liked to incite as much chaos as possible, death and murder bringing her a large amount of joy. She was an extremely skilled fighter as well, and would often enter the fray and slice people down with ease. Her fighting skills are considered to be only second to Ares himself. So if you ever did piss her off, then that would likely be the last thing that you do. She was also instrumental in the Great War of Troy and played a large part in facilitating and inciting much of the bloodshed that occurred during that fight. Apparently, she also brought war to the Philippines as well. Not only does her fighting prowess scare me, but what worries me the most about her is her deep love of terror. All of the research that I did on her kept citing that she was a lover of terror and pain. She seems like the type of Greek goddess who would incite a major conflict that could kill thousands just simply because she was bored or to gain pleasure out of it. Definitely not the type of god that you'd want to get on the wrong side of. Number 4 on this list is Apate. Apate is the daughter of Erebus, the god of darkness, and Nyx, the god of the night. She's also the sister to Moros, who we'll get into later in this video. Unlike her parents, she didn't represent darkness or the night, but she represented deceit. Lies, deception, fraud, these were all things that Apate excelled at. Being the goddess of deceit, naturally she took an insane amount of pride in lying to others and tricking them. It wasn't enough to just pull the wool over somebody's eyes though, she wanted to ruin people's lives and loved whenever she did it. I'm gonna read off one story that exemplifies the type of trickery that I'm talking about. This comes from the website Greek Gods and Goddesses. In one story involving Apate, Hera, the wife of Zeus, learned about her husband's affair with the Theban princess Semele and looked to Apate for help in punishing the princess. To make matters worse, the princess had a child by Zeus named Dionysus, who would become the god of wine. Apate agreed to help and gave Hera a magical girdle which she used to trick Semele into asking Zeus to see his real self, and the princess died as a result. Whenever the gods approached humans, they would appear as something else and hide their true forms because no mere mortal could survive looking directly at a god. This is the type of stuff that Apate would do. Trick somebody into watching as the person they were romantically involved with dies right before their eyes. Evil things that would haunt people's dreams for the rest of their lives. It's one thing to be all-powerful and outright to be able to beat you in a fight, and I'm definitely scared of gods like that, but at least I know with gods like that I'm beat. With a god like Apate, you won't even know that you're in the fight until it's too late. At any point, she could trick you and damn your soul to hell for eternity. Not the type of person that you'd want to have an interaction with. Number 3 on this list is Kronos. Kronos is technically considered a titan, but I'm going to allow it for this video. He was the son of Gaia and Uranus and is one of the most powerful beings in all of Greek mythology. In fact, his power is so vast that he was the one who fathered 3 of the most known Greek gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. He ruled over the world for some time, but before he did that, he's noted as doing a brutal act. In Greek mythology, it goes that Kronos murdered his own father, but to do it, he took a sickle and castrated his dad, and then threw his father's remains into the sea. All of that is very questionable and makes me a tad bit scared of him to begin with, but his vast power is what frightens me the most. Kronos was eventually defeated by his sons, but it took all of their strength to make it happen. He is the god of time and can manipulate it at will. A power like this is almost too strong for any individual to have, even if they are a god. Eventually, Zeus imprisoned his father in the depths of Tartarus, where he should still remain. For the world to prosper under Zeus, Kronos had to be sent away. This scares me as well, because if Kronos ever was to break free from his prison, then his wrath would be vast beyond our knowing, and the world would likely cease to exist. Number 2 on this list is Hades. This wouldn't be a complete list if we didn't talk about the god of the Greek underworld himself. The god of death, to my understanding, wasn't inherently evil at his core. Many people depict death as being an evil thing, and those who facilitate said death to have that characteristic in them. Hades wasn't this way though. He cared for the balance of life as a whole and understood that death was necessary in maintaining that balance. Just because he wasn't evil though doesn't mean we shouldn't fear him. He was cold and stern and unwavering when it came to his position. We also need to remember that he was the god of the underworld, Greece's version of hell. Leaving this place was a big no-no for Hades. He strictly forbade anyone from ever leaving the confines of this underworld and would become extremely enraged if anyone attempted this. His wrath would also know no bounds for those who tried to cheat death or cross him. Legend goes that Pirithous tried to kidnap and wed Hades' wife Persephone. Hades discovered of this plan and tricked him into coming to a feast. Once there, snakes wrapped around his feet and kept him captive until Hades was through with him. Then he was fed to his hound, Cerberus, a 3-headed dog which is by Hades' side at all times and acts as a gatekeeper to the underworld. Along with the fact that Hades can be quite brutal if you ever attempt to cross him, he is also incredibly intelligent as well. There's many a story of Hades outsmarting other gods and getting his way. This intelligence, coupled with his immense power and the fact that he's the actual god of death, makes it clear that he's one of the scariest Greek gods to ever exist. Number 1 on this list is Moros. Moros was a premortal deity and is the offspring of Nyx. It's said that Nyx conceived him without any male intervention at all. However, some experts on the subject dispute this, saying that Erebus, the god of darkness, was the father. Moros was feared by all. Even Zeus was reportedly afraid of the ability that this Greek deity possessed. The website Greek Boston has a great article talking about how inherently powerful Moros was, and I'm going to quote that now. Moros was powerful, so he couldn't just be taken down by another god. He would always find a way to bring misfortune to his impending victims. He was called by the people and the other gods the all-destroying god. Even after his victim died and went to live in death, he did not set them free. He decided to make sure they suffered. He's not only seen as the god of death, but also the god of death and suffering. His name is near to Moros, meaning sullen and ill-tempered, near to the spirit of depression. So that passage gives you an idea of the temperament of this god, but it doesn't explain his ability, and his ability is what scares me most of all. Moros would literally decide your fate of death. He would write it out and then give it to his brother to make sure that his victim's destiny wasn't forced, and that's exactly what it was. destiny. If you became aware of your fate and tried to intervene, then chaos would rain down on you and the earth. This is why other gods were scared of Moros. Even though Zeus was extremely powerful, it's said that not even he could go against this destiny, and therefore Moros would have the ability to overpower Zeus in this way if he chose to. This power, along with the fact that he won't ever leave you alone, not even after you've died, is what makes me so fearful of Moros. Anything dark and dreadful that is said to happen in your life, Moros is at the hands of it and guiding you the entire way. Also, every visual representation of him I could find is very dark and reminds me of death. Just another reason why he's one of the scariest Greek gods that ever was.
Kicking off at number 5, the Minotaur. And the fact that this horrifying creation is chasing up the rear at number 5 should say something about the ferocity of this list. You see, the Minotaur, for all intents and purposes, whilst being an icon of folklore and mythology, is also a creature of such pain, torment and revulsion that it was actually pretty hard to stomach, comparable to many other Greek legends. It's one that has found its way into the fold of many interlocking myths, a grotesque abomination that possessed the body of a man and the head of a bull, captured and confined to his labyrinthine prison on the island of Crete. In many ways, the Minotaur is the embodiment of all of the harrowing themes so often found in Greek mythology: pity, rage, unbridled cruelty, disobeying the gods, the penance of breaking cultural and societal taboos. And on that note, yeah, we should probably explain just how the Minotaur got its bull-headed head. I'm not too sure who to feel sorry for actually, but maybe make your own minds up about that. As the legend goes, King Minos, before his time as the ruler of Crete, competed with his brothers for the throne of the island. In desperation, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the god of the sea, to send him a snow-white bull as a sign of his support. Poseidon did so under the sole condition that he was to kill the bull to show his honor to the deity, but instead Minos kept it because of its great beauty. To punish him, Poseidon made Pasiphae, Minos' wife, fall deeply in love with the bull. Through some strange manner of craftsmanship, she eventually mated with the snow-white bull, and thus she birthed the Minotaur. At first she nursed him as a mother, but he quickly grew ferocious and began eating small children before working his way up to fully sized adults. Eventually the Minotaur had caused so much cannibalistic chaos that King Minos commissioned Daedalus, the father of Icarus, to construct an impossible labyrinth to contain the Minotaur, and eventually it was engineered near the palace of Knossos. To appease the savage Minotaur and later to appease King Minos for the death of his son Androgeus, the city of Athens were bound to send 7 young men and 7 young maidens to be released into the labyrinth and feasted upon by the beast every year, until eventually it was slain by the hero Theseus. And yeah, guys, this is just the introduction. Swinging in at number 4, the Chimera, which, whilst being a word I just love to say, also I love saying chimeric. The Chimera of ancient Greek mythology deserves its place on this list for its influence alone. Although on the surface the Chimera may seem like a hodgepodge of things that don't ever quite mesh for the unbridled horror that we expect, this terrifying monster is far more than the sum of its parts. First appearing in the Iliad, penned by the legendary Homer himself, the Chimera was initially described as a thing of immortal make, not human, lion-fronted and snake behind, a goat in the middle, and snorting out the breath of the terrible flame of bright fire. A ferocious fire-breathing monstrosity, the Chimera was traditionally considered to have been a female creature, one that had given birth to both the Sphinx and the Nemean lion of antiquity. It is a monster that was greatly feared by the ancient Greeks, and it would appear as an omen to many, heralding storms, shipwrecks and natural disasters. The Chimera is perhaps best known for its part in the legend of Bellerophon, the hero of the city of Corinth, who was ordered by the king of Lycia to slay the beast in penance for his past sins. Knowing that he would need assistance for such a mighty task, Bellerophon prayed and slept in the temple of Athena, urging the goddess of wisdom to bestow upon him a blessing fit for a hero. Upon waking, Bellerophon was led by the hand by the goddess to the mythical horse Pegasus, a divine creature that possessed the power of flight, because, well, how do you defeat a fire-breathing lion with a poison venomous snake tail? Well, a giant flying horse, of course. And if you want to know where that particular horse came from, hold your horses, because we'll get to that. Eventually, Bellerophon attacked the creature from the air, impaling its mouth with a spear of pure lead that melted just as the Chimera breathed its fire on it, smelting the ore to its face and then suffocating it to death. And that's the end of the Chimera, really? Or is it? Yeah, it is. Next up at number 3, the Hydra. And of course, because I just bet you guys were expecting this particular many-headed monster to rear all of its head towards us actually. In fact, in many ways, the Hydra is perhaps one of the most iconic creatures in the whole of Greek mythology, and if anything, it's certainly the poster child of the many-headed mantra of evil. And if you're expecting a Hail Hydra joke, please, you know better than that. The Lernaean Hydra, or more simply known as the Hydra, is a serpentine water monster that finds its crossover in both Greek and Roman mythology. According to the poet Hesiod, the serpentine Hydra was said to possess poisonous breath and blood so virulent that even breathing in the miasma that it exuded was deadly enough. The Hydra possessed many heads, the exact number of which varies from source to source, and in some texts were actually infinite. You see, in some stories, the Hydra was a creature of great regeneration, and whichever head was cut from its body, 2 more would grow back in its place. Interestingly enough, many parallels of the same creature appear in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Assyrian mythologies, but the most iconic of them all occurs in the infamous Greek legend, the 12 Labours of Heracles, which, side note, is a hella messed up legend to begin with, down to the fact that after being driven mad by Hera, Heracles killed his son, daughter, and his own wife, Megara. Yeah, Disney. You missed that bit out, didn't ya? You see, hoping for some kind of penance, Heracles undertook the 12 Labours as a feat of near certain death, and the Hydra just so happened to be his second pit stop in that struggle. Before attacking the Hydra, Heracles covered his mouth and nose with a cloth to avoid the deadly toxins, and after realizing that trying to hack off each head was a hopeless task, he took to cauterizing each head one by one with a flaming torch. Well, I suppose if you're going to repent for murdering your own family, that's one way to do it. Coming in at number 2, the Gorgons. Of course, it just had to be. And in fear of us all turning into stone, I would recommend squinting for this particular segment. Seriously. Don't say I didn't warn you. Now, whilst the mythical race of Gorgons are incredibly prolific throughout ancient Greek mythology, of course, the most iconic of them all is Medusa. Don't get too ahead of your snake hair though, because we'll get to her shortly, and there's actually much more to it than just a villainous, stone-gazing monster. You see, whilst the description of Gorgons vary from text to text, they were said to have been birthed by the union of Phorcys, the sea god who often appeared as a crab, and Ceto, the sea goddess and mother of monsters. Gorgons were depicted as having wings, brazen claws, the tusks of boars, and stone skin. Now, although the Gorgon will later become an image of great power and protection, in early antiquity they were the OGs of horrifying evil. And yeah, by OG I do mean original Gorgon. To get to their later depiction though, of course, we have to tell the tale of the most famous Gorgon, Medusa, and the hero Perseus. As the legend tells it, Medusa was born of the Gorgons with a hideous face and a serpent's tail where her leg should have been. She was said to have been the only one of the 3 remaining Gorgons that was not immortal. And so King Polydictus dispatched Perseus in the hope of distracting him long enough for him to seduce his mother. What a jerk. Anyway, armed with a scythe and a mirrored shield gifted to him by Athena in lieu of being turned into stone by gazing at her, Perseus managed to use the reflection of the shield to safely cut off Medusa's head, and as the vile stream of blood spouted from her neck and fell into the sea, the winged horse Pegasus was born. Hey, told you we'd get to the Pegasus's origin story, right? The thing is though, after this whole debacle, Perseus attached Medusa's head to his shield and used it to kick some and take some names on his way home before giving it back to Athena as a gift, who then took it as her symbol and placed it on her shield. Greek mythology, guys, it's allegorical. I promise. I think. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, Typhon. And it just has to be, really, because for a pantheon of terrifying creatures of mythology, the one that gave birth to pretty much all of them has to take the top spot. Typhon is the father of all monsters. He was birthed from the Titan union of Gaia and Tartarus and was said to have been the most ferocious creature that has ever roamed the earth. Typhon was impossibly large, and it was said that when he stood upright, his head would brush against the stars. The lower half of his body consisted of the tails of 2 coiled vipers that would hiss and spit venom at his foes, and from his fingers several dragons' heads would erupt and spit flames beneath him. Typhon was said to have wings so large that when spread they would blot out the sun. Fire would spill from his eyes like molten lava, and it was said that whoever gazed upon him would perish in fear, even the mighty Olympians. And yes, that included even the mightiest of all the Olympians, Zeus himself. You see, Typhon was such a terrifying and powerful entity that the only conceivable opponent to defy him was Zeus himself. At the dawn of all things, whilst the other Olympians trembled and fled in fear, Zeus stood his ground against this monstrous being, resulted in a great battle where countless earthquakes and devastating tsunamis raged across the planet. In fact, as Greek mythology makes pretty clear, the war that raged between Zeus and Typhon was so mighty that it threatened to break the planet clean in 2. Eventually, Zeus managed to gain the upper hand, and he triumphed over Typhon by firing 100 thunderbolts to the head of the monster, casting him back down into the pits of Tartarus, where he was sealed away for all time. Yet, even the pits of Tartarus aren't enough to fully contain the rage of Typhon, and whilst he remains trapped beneath the earth, the fits of anger that he experiences manifest themselves in the form of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. And what more can we say? Greek mythology, again, it's allegorical, I promise.